sake of what we covered during the last time, the first session, just a little bit briefly for the benefit of those who weren't here before. We talked a little bit about the formulation of the Raven Teen Club, which is run by Richard Thielen, and Richard and I grew up together. He lived on Howard Street, I lived on Vernon Street in the Hill in Harrisburg, and we knew each other, and we were personal friends since 4th grade. We still are. And he's quite a colorful character. A lot of great stories with him, and he's comical as can be. But we talked about that, and because at the time, when all this began, we were in transition. I had a group that was just ending called the Endells. It's my first group. And the Delcourts, the group from York, that had just broken up. So I was looking for 7 people to go on the road with, which was really difficult because who wants to go on the road to earn a living in music? And it was risky, but I thought with the availability of people that were around, it might be a good combination. So I started putting together the 7 people that we came up with in the Magnificent Men. There was an overlap because some of the dates that I still had booked with the Endells had to be honored via the contract that I signed and had to deliver. So it was kind of awkward, but nonetheless, Dick Phelan had a place uptown called the Front Street Barn, and we were playing up there on Sunday nights with just a rhythm section. At that time, we were trying to betwixt and between. And subsequent to that, with the Raven being built, Dick and I talked about it. He said, "Do you think you'd be interested in being the band for the house band for the club?" He said, "We're thinking of bringing in another entertainment. We want to know, besides just playing there, would you be interested in that?" I said, "Yes, we would." So, make a long story short, we ended up as the house band, and there is a handout. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but during that first year, these are all the acts that we had backed up at that time. And there's one act that is missing off there. It's Wilson Pickett. After I thought of this, like everything else at my age, I have a hard time recalling everything. So that was one that needed to be added to. But and a lot of people wondered how did that work because backing up artists. When did it take place? Where did it take place? It was very quick. That night, the night of the performance of the guest artists that were there, the rehearsal started that afternoon, usually sometime between 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they all had a conductor with them, and it's usually a guitar player and sometimes a piano player. So at that time, they gave us charts, and we went over the material and rehearsed it. The song list and the keys of the song, and the rest is history. We hope we got it right, behind each of the performers. But that's how that whole thing started. Dick went on to bigger and better things. He became a local booking agent for bands for Maynard McKissick in Penn World Attractions, where he booked everybody that was local, and us as well, in the Endells. Then he moved on to after the Raven days, he moved on to becoming a big-time booking agent for the biggest acts in the business. But he became very successful then with a chain of the gingerbread man restaurants. So I think initially he had 19 of them. I think he has 4 of them left right now. But he just recently moved back from Florida, so. It's good to see him again, and that's basically that's what brought us up to what I'm picking up from today. Because after the last session, we got a number of inquiries, phone calls, texts, and emails about what happened to the Magnificent Men after the Raven when you went on the road in late 1966, and so. Well, it wasn't late 1960s, it was hit the road. Well, we started performing at that time, road performances, a lot of New York City performances at that time as well, because we were recording at Capitol Studios at 46th and 7th Avenue. So what we were doing there is we were recording during the day, and at nighttime we were performing at the clubs in the area. And so it kept us all pretty busy. I am going to go through some of the places that we covered because people ask about that as well. As I mentioned before, the first time around we had 4 different circuits that we covered. We covered the college concert series, which is colleges everywhere. I mean, more than I can begin to tell you the names of all of them. We covered a lot of colleges, and they were all one-nighters. Good money, but all one-nighters. Definitely the most arduous work that we've had among all the different types of work that we were performing at that time. We were doing nothing more but getting on the bus, traveling from state to state, and then playing. And our road manager, our former road manager, Wally Stoddard here, he was with us. He was the guy that drove the bus and set the itineraries, and then everything else, coordinated everything with our office to ensure where we're going, what time we have to be there, and so forth. But that was a lot of work. This other series we covered the nightclub series, which I'll talk about. I'll just mention a few, and a lot of them are not on there, but they were, that gave us a break. We did nightclubs, they were usually 2 to 3 week stints, so you had the time to rest during the day and play. Most clubs ran Tuesday nights through Saturday nights. Then we did the Chitlin circuit, which were all the black nightclubs and better black theaters. I had it backwards. All the theaters and then your better black nightclubs that were out there. And the theaters were usually about 2 weeks at a theater, and the nightclubs were usually about 1 week. Then we did the military clubs on the military basis. So that was good. They were all one-nighters as well. But I wanted to mention that because people said, well, what kind of work did you do? And briefly, I know I mentioned that before in the last session, but I wanted to let people know the ground that we were covering. Talk a little bit right now about the scope of things. Because we traveled from Boston, Massachusetts, Brockton, Massachusetts, down back through over through New York State, down through New England, into northern Jersey, then into Philadelphia, Virginia, Washington, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, right down the line, Florida, and then we got into the Midwest to other areas Detroit and Chicago, Ohio, a lot of work in Ohio. So just want to give you a background of the scope of areas that we covered. Most of the work was in the eastern half of the country, as far as that goes, but it was north to south. Recordings that we did, a lot of people had questions about recordings. We did 2 studio albums at Capitol in New York City. We did a live album for Capitol, but that was live at the Uptown Theater in Philadelphia. And then we did a number of singles in Chicago at Brunswick Studios, and they were incorporated with some of our albums. As far as TV shows, I have a lot to cover, so I'm going to try to get through this as quick as I can. We did the Mike Douglas show out of Philadelphia. That was one of the first ones we did. And locally, we did Channel 8 Dance Party. We did the Merv Griffin show in New York City. We did the Dick Cavett show in New York City. And both of those, what was interesting about both of those, they were both at the Ed Sullivan Theater. And the Ed Sullivan Theater is a very famous theater. And as a matter of fact, when I was a kid, I watched the Beatles performing from the Ed Sullivan Theater. But when I got in there, it was like standing on that stage, and I thought of all the great performers, entertainers, singers, musicians, artists that performed at the Ed Sullivan Theater. And I'm standing on the same floor as that. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's just amazing that these things happen. You think about it, you don't always realize that when they happen, what it's like. It's almost like a dream. So anyway, but then we covered, we did some studio albums, as I said, studio recordings at Brunswick Studios in Chicago, which had a completely different sound. But we did incorporate that with some of the Magmen albums. Then we recorded one album on Mercury Records, which was called Better Than a 10-Cent Movie. I have copies of all the albums here. None of this stuff is for sale. That's all just strictly for, I'm gonna go up and take pictures with it, that's fine. I know people either like, you know, can I buy that or can I take it? Nonetheless, I did want to share a couple stories with you that are relevant to some of the things that we did. The Mike Douglas show was a pretty interesting show for us. And after that show, we got to meet some of the entertainers we were on the show with. And it was just different because I've never performed it on a TV show of that magnitude. We did some of the local TV shows, but these shows were getting bigger and bigger. And when we did the Merv Griffin show, we were on the Merv Griffin show with Jimmy Dean and we were at Arlene Dahl, or those of us our age, you know, that. And on the Dick Cavett show, we were on there with Michael Caine's wife. She was Miss India, and also with what is his name now? Played The Odd Couple, the movie The Odd Couple.
Tony.
Jack Blackman.
I mean Jack.
No.
No, the other. Yeah.
Tony Rand.
Jack Lemmon.
Jack Lemmon. So it was interesting doing these shows. I think that, I'm not sure if that was correct or not, Jack Lemmon. No, I'm sorry, I stand corrected. No, Tony Randall. It was Tony Randall. I guess I had the wrong show. All right. But we also did something that was different. People heard about it, but they never knew what it was. We did the Johnny Carson show in concert at the University of Dayton. And we were the entertainment along with the Ohio Players, which was a big band at that time. And we performed the show, did a spot, made about 20 minutes on that. For your information, the show is very much follows the TV format, except some of the material was a little bluer. And we got to meet Johnny Carson, of course. We talked with him and everything. He was very nice, kind of on the shy side, but very nice. One of the most interesting characters I got to meet was Doc Severinsen. And after the show was over, they had a big buffet for everybody that was the cast and all the guest stars that were on that show. And so we got to meet Doc Severinsen, and he's a great trumpet player, and he had a great band at that time. Ed Shaughnessy on drums, terrific drummer. I got to meet Ed and some of the other musicians. But as we were talking, Doc Severinsen said, "Where are you guys from?" I said, "From Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, York, Pennsylvania." He said, "Oh, I know the area very well." I said, "Yeah, how so?" He said, "Well, I went to Susquehanna University in Selinsgrove." He said, "On weekends, we'd be down to Harrisburg to some of those great clubs." He said, "You had clubs like the White Elephant, the Pueblo, he said there was and he said, he said there was a new club opening up down there, starting that had jazz early on, was the Choral Club. He said, there were a lot of good artists in Pennsylvania and everything. He said that he knew Harrisburg very well. He was very nice in spite of loud clothing he wore and stuff like that, but he one heck of a player. So that was a very interesting conversation we had. And I did ask him, I said, does that man really drink as much as he appears to? And he said, he can hold it. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm just going to read through this list because people really don't understand the magnitude of how much work is involved to perform, whether they are one-nighters, whether they are clubs, whether they are concerts. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of work involved when you reach that level. We were being booked at that time by William Morris Agency, which is the biggest in the country then, and they are now. And they had us doing anything and everything. But we did have some inquiries about the clubs, and the locations of the clubs, where we worked, what was the first club, and the first place we played on the road. Well, the first place we played on the road was called, it was in Newburgh, New York. And let's see here. Yeah, it was called the Trade Winds. That's the very first place we played. And the fact that we went on the road didn't mean that backing up people stopped, because with that first job out, we backed up Lenny Welch that night. And he had just got out of the Army at that time, so we backed him up again. And so that's how that began. Nonetheless, as I mentioned a little earlier, while we were recording, we were performing around New York City. And some of the clubs in New York City were the Peppermint Lounge, the Wagon Wheel. They were both owned by the same person. The Metropole, Unganos, which was a club uptown in New York City. The Cheetah Club at 53rd and Broadway, which we performed there with a lot of big artists. Beautiful club, big club. Dance Tempo City, which was in Brooklyn, New York. And Dance Tempo City was the club that was used for Saturday Night Fever. Okay, by that time it was taken over by the 2001 corporation. But it was a former bowling alley of all things, but we played there. And New York State, we played at Lake George and Lake George, New York. We played a big club that was opening up, and it didn't last very long. It was a beautiful club. It was kind of high-end, but for some reason it didn't go. It was called the Continental Safari, and that was in Kennett Square, down near Westchester. We also played, prior to that though, a club that was hot at that time in Kennett Square. It was called the Anvil Inn, and that was prior to the Continental Safari. When the Continental Safari came into existence, that's when we started playing there. It was a big club, good money, but it just didn't, it lasted about a year and a half, and that was about it. We did the Beach Club in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We did the Virginia Beach Club in Virginia Beach. We did the Bridge Supper Club in Washington, D.C. We did the Music Box in Cleveland, which was a Chitlin Circuit Club, a black club. We did the 20 Grand Club, which was a Chitlin Circuit Club in Detroit. The 20 Grand Club was a big club, and that was Motown owned that club. And what they did was, that was designed for the Motown acts that when they came off the road, they didn't lay idle. Smokey Robinson put them to work in the 20 Grand Club, performing, their material, and it's a great club, a beautiful place. We worked the Crazy Horse in Washington, D.C. We worked, of course, in Harrisburg, the Choral Club. New York, the 615 Lounge. The Old Colony Inn in Lancaster. The Rajah Theater in Reading. the illusion in Anvil was not the illusion at that time, but earlier, I forget what it was, before it was that, but subsequent to that, though, we played push sticks. Everybody played push sticks. I believe in the world, it was from around here. And one of the biggest events we had was we played at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. That was kind of one of the highlights of that's. Although it's not a club, it's a big circuit. We played in a lounge. We didn't play in the main room. In those days, they had a lot of lounges. They called them lounges, but the lounges were very big, believe it or not, where we played. And we were on that show with Mongo Santa Maria, his band, and we were on with a number of artists. We worked there Tuesday nights through Saturday in Las Vegas, and on Saturdays we had to do a matinee. And matinee, I did mention this in the last session, but I want people to know about it. They had something called the Name Is the Same show, and we were on that show. The Name Is the Same was all the movie stars, singers, musicians, all the sons and daughters of them. And they were on that show. It was Gary Lewis and the Playboys, and Dino Desi and Billy, and Mickey Rooney Jr., who was one unbelievable drummer. So we got a chance to meet all these. Nancy Sinatra. The conductor for that was Frank Sinatra's son. And so it's pretty interesting meeting these people and then performing with them. So anyway, excuse me. But that's a little bit, that covers a little bit of the places that we played. People would say, where were you playing? We were playing everywhere. As I said, the colleges, just down south, the VMI and Chapel Hill. I mean, it was ridiculous. We were all over the place, but great experiences, but a lot of work. I want to talk a little bit now about reunions. We had several reunions. I'm not going to go day to day, but I'll just mention the places. We had 2 reunions at the Strand Capitol in New York. We had one at the Forum in Harrisburg. As far as Magman reunions, we had one at Wisehaven in New York. We had one at the Whitaker Center in Harrisburg. And now, one of the things that occurred with some of the reunions, we didn't have all of the original guys that were in the Magman. And for that, at that time, when they started, my wife and I had formed a group, Class Act, featuring Rita. My lovely wife was here, Rita. Who is very talented. I guess I'm a little biased, but she really is. Anyway, we'll talk about that a little later. And I couldn't get everybody available to do any of all the concerts and reunions that we had. The only time that occurred was the last one that we had was at the Whitaker Center, and that was, I think, 2007 or 2000, almost 2008. It was November of 2007, right after Thanksgiving. And a lot of people asked about that. Some people didn't realize that there's a DVD on that. And I brought some because a couple people asked me the last time we were here about it. And I said, well, I'll bring some if anybody's interested, fine. This is the DVD. It plays well on a big screen and on a big system. But they are available. They're $20 if anybody's interested. But I did want to point out that at that particular reunion, okay, what the audience didn't know is it was Class Act featuring Rita pays tribute to the Magnificent Men with special guests Dave Bupp and Buddy King, the 2 lead singers. But what the audience didn't know is that we had all of the original Magnificent Men at that reunion, so they could happen to come up and do 2 of our biggest songs, which was Peace of Mind and Stormy Weather. So that was kind of a surprise to the audience. It went very well, and it was just an enjoyable concert. I enjoyed concert work more than anything. Anything we did, that's always my favorite venue, will be concerts. I did want to address also some of the other bands that had occurred in our career. As I said, I started out with the Endels, my first band. Second band was originally the Magnificent Seven. A lot of people thought we were the Magnificent Men from the start, but it really wasn't. I think there's a handout on this, okay? The Endels was the first group I had. That actually started October 10th of 1961, okay? But we didn't group with everybody, with the singers and so forth, until 1962. And bookings went all the way through 1962 to the end of 1964. And I had a couple carryovers into 65. But the first version of the Magnificent Men was called the Magnificent Seven. And when we went up to New York City to audition, we were called the Magnificent Seven, and we performed with, we did I guess you could call it an audition or tryout at the Peppermint Lounge with Johnny Maestro at the Crests. And it went pretty well. The reaction of the audience was well, so but we weren't sure what was going to happen next. And the people that were interested in us were people referred to us from my brother, who's here tonight, Andy Angelucci, from the famous Ford